What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Ralph, joined alongside Seth Engle and a special guest today, Ben Chase. Welcome, Ben. We are the 1-0 podcast, in case you didn't know. We're doing something a little special today. We're not going full on the Penn State football analysis today. We are going on a little bit of a unique one-off here on the podcast with Ben. So Ben is trying to break a record for most games seen in one season. I believe the number you're shooting for is 70. Is that right?
Yeah. And just to add a qualifier on there, it's like most on the road. Like it's a road trip record.
Okay.
Because there's like the record is 50 by two brothers in 2016. I've met a guy who's done 81, but his name is Mike. He flies and he drives, and he's a great guy. But so my record is the road trip record, all on the road. Like no flights, no boats or anything like that. But yeah, basically that's what I'm doing.
Okay, so 70 games on the road in one season. What brought you to try and do this?
Sure. So I'm a Florida Gator. A little background on that, and I went to grad school in DC, and I used to drive from like DC to Gainesville overnight on a Friday or whatever. And then after I graduated, I lived in Orlando, and I do like UCF on a Friday, Auburn on a Saturday, and then I drove from Orlando to College Station one night overnight, and that was bad because we lost and it was behind a hurricane. But so Gator Twitter is I wouldn't say I'm like known to Gator Twitter, but people have banned me from road games and Gator Twitter because of these road trips. So I was like, all right, well, we'll figure it out. And for the past 5 or 6 years, people have sent me the Reddit map, the ultimate college football road trip. And the timing of leaving my last job was about 3 weeks before the season started. And I was looking at other opportunities, and, I just thought about this. I love college football, and I said, all right, well, let me just pull up a map and kind of see. And I looked up, and the record was 50, like I said. And I said, all right, well, let me just I pulled up D1, D2, FCS, HBCU, all Ivy League. And I said, all right, without knowing any times, because, you don't know the times until like a week out or 2 weeks out. I got 62 on an outline. And I was like, all right, so let's just chase 60. And as the season has progressed, I picked up 2 games because of Hurricane Ian. I've done 5 double Saturdays. And this past week, I was like, screw it, let's go for 70. So that's where basically the background of what we're at now.
Gotcha.
So you mentioned, previous jobs. I'm just wondering, as you do all this, are you like employed?
No. I don't even have time to do my summaries. So on my Instagram, my last summary is like game 15 and 16 or something. And I just finished game, the Penn State game was game 34. I don't even have time to type summaries. I'm just grinding so much, between like this week, I'm driving 61 hours to just 3 games. This is my like lightest week of the season, but I wanted to go to the West Coast because if you're doing a college football road trip, you got to hit the West Coast a few times. I've realized I could probably easily do 80, 85 games on a road trip and just stay on the East Coast. But that, to me, that like, I can't feel like accomplished my personal goals if I do that,
Yeah. So you're not employed right now, but I was watching a couple of the other interviews you've done on this trip. You said you've only paid for tickets at like 4 games. Like, so this has become kind of doable because of some of this stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're at 34 games now, and I think I've only paid for 7 tickets or 6 or 7. I'll have to go back and I can probably name the games off, but yeah, it's more that. So the first week 0, I announced this, like, I'm going to go do this record. And very quickly, it's like, we are doing this with you. I've had over 150 people like Venmo me. I'm behind on thank you cards, but I've given out 90 thank you cards. Wow. But yeah, like basically at this point, if Betty, my van, my 2017 Dodge Grand Caravan, Betty White, if she can hold up, I just got my 6th oil change today.
Jeez.
Yeah, like if she can hold up, we're gonna do this. And I try to tell stories along the road. And but yeah, you've done your research. I definitely I don't have time for a job, and yeah, it's pretty wild.
So
Betty White, that's an interesting name. What went into that?
Well, I got the van in May, and Betty passed away in January, and it was either Betty White or Vanna White. But I was like, it's more fun to call a van Betty than Vanna, and it was like a nod to Betty White lived an adventurous life, and she was always inspiring people. And I figured I'm going to be riding this thing till the wheels come off. So it was like a nod to her.
Okay, yeah. So the trip brought you to Penn State this past weekend, yeah? And
yeah.
So just give us kind of the rundown of leading into it. I don't know if you got to tailgate at all. What you thought afterward? You got a whiteout on this trek.
Yeah,
that worked out pretty well.
Oh man, it's crazy. I didn't have the whiteout on the schedule until about 3 weeks before I had it on originally, and then my friend, he in the last year and a half has lost a bunch of weight, and we were planning. And he lives in DC, and I went a wedding on Sunday. We are going to go to the Maryland game, but he had some complications. So I was like, all right, well, is that cool? Since you're not going, I'm going to go to whiteout. And he's like, yeah. So the whiteout, like originally, I had it on, and then I was like, he hasn't been to a football game in like a year and a half, 2 years, and that's like he's one of my best friends. So I like, there's points in my life where I care about sharing moments, and that was one of them. But because of that, so I got the whiteout on the schedule, and actually it was the second game of the day. So I went to St. Francis right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And what was great about that game was, and I didn't think about it until someone replied, I was like, man, this is the shortest game I've been at. And someone replied, no TV timeouts. And I was like, oh, wow. Like that made such a big difference, because in my head, that was my fifth double, and the game started at 1. So, and I was like, all right, well, 1, it'll be like 3 hours and 45 minutes, get to my car by 4. But I got to my car, and I think I got to my car at like 4:11 or 4:15. It was like so quick, which is mind boggling. So then I got to State College, and my uncle, it's the first game that I had family with me. He has friends that the Fullington Auto Group, and they have a massive bus, and they had $2,000 worth of food being cooked at the tailgate. So yeah, like it was steaks and these like stuffed peppers that were spicy and incredible. And then they were so organized. They had coolers, and on the top of the cooler on the Sharpie it said Trulies, sodas. Like it was like the in Sharpie. I've never seen that before. I was like, dang, like y'all are really organized. And then inside the bus, like full bar. It was cool because when I was getting into that area, there was some company that was throwing white shirts out, like 2 people walking by, and I was in my car in a van at that point, and they threw 3 into our into the driver's side window, and so I got an extra white shirt. And what I do at each game is I buy a shirt and hat of the home team, and I'm going to turn the shirts into like a blanket of all the schools I've been at, which is really cool. And then I give the hats away to people that have like contributed. Like I'll mail them. I do like a little spinny thing, and I try to pick out names. I haven't done it in a few weeks, so I got probably like 20 hats to give away right now. But so that's so I did get to tailgate a little bit, to answer your question the long way. And I actually met up with some friends that are from Orlando, and there was the second time I've had people that like have been at 2 games with me. They were UCF guys, but they wanted to come up for the game.
Okay. Now, was this one of the tickets you had to pay for?
My uncle bought the tickets. He actually got. So usually I don't. Usually I go to wait till last minute, but he goes, "Hey, I found $66 tickets," and I was like,
"Wow."
I was like, yeah, we'll get those. Because like online, it was like $100 something. I was like, yeah, let's go with that. So, yeah. So we got value on that, and I think it was just friends of friends that they just paid face value for. So
sure, yeah.
So Ben, how did the whiteout, from your perspective, compare to the other 34 games that you had seen this year?
Yeah, so I would say that before this trip and during this trip, I've always said I'm a Gator, and one of my favorite places in the country is Auburn. Like I've been to 3 Auburn games now, and like you walk in, and from the moment you're there, like every moment is queued up. And I would say that the whiteout is like right up there. Like visually, it's unreal. Like like when you walked in and you just see like, it's. I've been to 3 blackouts, a maze out, and 1 whiteout, and I would say visually, like it's one of the top 3. Like when you walk in, you're like, holy crap! I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but holy crap! And how with the shakers, there every little thing in the first probably 30 minutes later, kickoff was teed up, and the whole like every time you did a tribute to a player, and they always did like the "We Are Penn State" like 3 times, and the "Thank you, you're welcome." Like just everyone knew their role, and I thought that was really cool. And for me, like I care so much about the pageantry and the tradition, and I would say that like Penn State is there's very few places like it. And from like the game, obviously the first half, it was I follow Penn State because I worked in NIL kind of with some of the stuff that's going on there,
Okay.
and so I'm kind of tapped into the culture because of that. And my uncle is a Penn State fan, so. But then, like the first two drives, the 3 and outs and the booing, like, and you could tell that the tension. I didn't realize because I went to the Michigan. I won't talk about it, but like at the Michigan game that you guys played in, like obviously you don't because there was different vibes, right? But like seeing there the first two drives, I didn't realize that was where the level of like hostility was. So
Right.
that was surprising. But no, but going back like from pageantry, like there's very few places that I've been that I'm like, wow. And I told my uncle, I was like, I'm getting emotional right now. And I think one of the coolest things, no, I'm serious. And like for me to get like when I'm at UF, when I go back, like just the first game of the season, like I get really emotional because it was my dream school and like I fell in love with there and like it's like indoctrinating you into it. And like when I was there, I told him, I was like, man, this is, and I think one of the coolest thing is, so right now the biggest trend in college football from like a show or like an in-game thing is the light show. The light show that is going on, but normally it's at the end of the third quarter, synced up to music. And you guys are the first school that I've seen have it as the intro. And I thought it was a cool way to start off the game, having that as part of it. So that's a very unique thing that obviously is new for you guys and new for me to see it in that moment. And I was like, damn, I was like, I'm surprised that other schools aren't doing it like this.
Yeah.
But so yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I loved it, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I think a big reason for the whole light show thing before the game starts is because of that entrance. That's like Penn State's like biggest marketing tactic. Like that 2019, the 2019 Michigan game where they had that one, the delay of game, and then that one entrance, they put that on repeat for so long. So getting that like first 5 minutes before kickoff, down, and then also that first snap, that's like incredibly huge for the program.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you tired of hearing Mo Bamba yet?
So, did you see my tweet about Mo Bamba?
I didn't see that. No.
Oh my god, that's so. I literally said no one loves Mo Bamba more than Penn State. I literally tweeted that. That's so funny.
No, they will milk that for forever.
They played it at least 20 times.
Yeah, and it's funny because there was the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I was like, oh, Mo Bamba's back. And then there may have been like a week, I don't know why, where I didn't hear it like once maybe. And then Penn State, it's funny because like every school has like their beats or whatever. And you guys have the Nittany Lion, like the growl, the rah, 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 rah thing. And then you have like South Carolina has like the rooster or the gamecock, like every time they get a first down, it screams or whatever. So it's kind of cool to see different things like that. I mean, the bands, the flip, the Nittany Lion, like everything that you guys had going on. Honestly, I actually said to my uncle a few times, because like now, that's the 34th game. And I also used to work at Disney and Magic Kingdom, like and I worked like New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. So like logistically, so like I look at things that people don't really look at during games, and the production of the opening, like where you're like the video screen, everything that they had on there, like the visuals of the cameraman, whoever produced that the pre-show, I was like, damn, this is like really well produced on the screen too, not just like in the stadium. So that was something I noticed. But outside the stadium, like getting beers, that's something that I would say that needs a little bit of work, but that's the only like negative thing I'd say. And that's only because where I was in EJU, so like upper bay area. That section, like there's only one person and like a cooler of beers, and the line is super long. But if I went around to the corner to like the NA, is it ends? The ends?
Honestly,
I think that's what it was. I don't know. But that section, you could walk right up and get a beer. So I think maybe just moving some of the coolers around. That was the only like I was like, obviously there's 106,000 people there.
Yeah.
But like just that was the only thing I was like, man, they should space out some of these beers, because they had like 400 people waiting in one line, and then I literally walked up to the cooler, grabbed a beer, and checked out. So that was the only thing I was like, huh.
They've only been selling beer.
Yeah,
In the
2 games,
stadium
right?
for-
Yeah,
two
that's
games.
interesting.
Yeah.
But so
So,
how?
but
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good.
I was just gonna
Sorry.
say, how do you think State College as a town compared to? I'm sure you
Yeah.
didn't get a whole lot of time to just walk around
No,
and
so
chill,
last
but
summer I was on campus. I was on a separate road trip, and I stopped on campus, kind of soaked it in. But I will say that when I drove into the tailgating area, someone else was driving at that point, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is crazy." She goes, "Boy, we just getting into it." Like, I
yeah,
think that honestly, like the drive into the tailgate area is probably like the most impressive one I've seen. Like I
wow,
don't know the way, like maybe Penn State is like on a hill where, like, I don't know the way, whatever pathway I took, I was like, dang, this is like legit. And
yeah,
because like in Gainesville, it's kind of spread out, like the tailgating areas, and then there's other schools where like you don't really drive through like where like proper tailgating, right? So
mhm.
I think that was something that and then I'm being legitimately honest, like the lady was like, she's like, yeah, you haven't seen nothing yet. So that was something that I really appreciated. I also like, everyone just seemed, to be having a good time, like regardless of, I was impressed that it was like so full after, the week before, and they,
Yeah.
the energy was always there throughout the game. And no, but sorry, go ahead. Any other questions or anything?
To be honest, I was kind of surprised. Like I felt like leading up to the week, it was one of the least anticipated whiteouts I've seen in a while, just because of what had happened the week before. But then you get in there and there's
Yeah,
109,000 people. But also that's why people were so quick to boo in the first quarter, which was kind of
yeah,
wild to see. But how many games
yeah.
have you gone to where people are booing after 2 drives?
Yeah, well, after the first drive, like
Yeah, they
Yeah,
certainly
were. I
three of
mean,
the, yeah, like it
they
was,
were booing. They were booing before they like when they were announcing Clifford and
yeah,
James.
yeah, that's the other thing. They booed Clifford and Coach Franklin, and
yeah,
I may have gotten that on camera. Like I was like, walk, because whenever I do my first one, I walk in, I try to like record like just like the vibe of me walking in at the beginning. Doesn't matter if it's full or not. And I was like, man, I was like, if it's, I was like, if this goes south, this could be like really tough. But
yeah.
I'm glad that it didn't go south. I legitimately care about the team that I'm rooting for when I'm there. And
Mm,
it's funny because going forward, like this week, one of the teams that I watched, Charlotte, they fired their head coach, and like multiple, I like
yeah.
texted the people I met at Charlotte about it, like because like I try to make friends at these games, and then I
Sure,
asked them like,
sure.
what are your thoughts on XYZ? And it's funny because like I've been to Auburn, and Auburn's coach has been on the hot seat forever, and
Mm,
I like out of nowhere, Charlotte is the first coach I've seen in person lose his job, unfortunately. But so like going forward, I'm very like almost every team that I've seen, like Syracuse, I was like all in on them against Clemson. So it's
yeah.
kind of funny to and because I meet people and I just care about their success.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we got to
So
go to Auburn earlier this year, and you mentioned how much you liked it, and I did like it there. But go ahead, Seth.
yeah, so I was just wondering. I mean, you meet people along the way. You're becoming friends with them. I'm just wondering, like, what comes next when you're done with this? Like, do you go back to work? Like, maybe you use some of those connections you made, or what's kind of your plan there?
Yeah, in the perfect world, I get back to my apartment in Tucson, end of January, and I'm way behind on the like video stuff, but take a few days to kind of soak it all in and put together some kind of pitch and package to Travel Channel, Discovery, any of the sports networks, and say, hey, like this is what I just did, and people cared, right? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe you do a pitch where it's like, all I need is ideally something bigger than a Dodge Caravan, even if it's just like a bus or a Sprinter, one videographer, one editor, and I can do all the promotion myself. But like, and we go and we say, all right, this week we're going to do a weekend at Penn State, right? And then in
Yeah.
that weekend, we get, what does that look like? We get there Thursday. I'm like, all right, we're going to post up at the bar, this restaurant, and this bar, and we're going to meet people, tell stories. I want to learn about everything, that y'all want to tell me about Penn State, right? And then Friday, I'm on campus. I meet, coaches, student athletes that have free availability to hang out, just, shoot the shit. And then Saturday is the story of game day. It's not even about the game, right? It's
Mm,
about that school and what they love and why they love it. And then sometime during the week, maybe Monday, Tuesday, I have like a national college football show where I talk about college football at a high level, break and then say, all right, this week I'll see you next week, Eugene, right?
Mhm.
And me and my team, my very small team, we want to go there. And like, I don't know if you guys saw, but at App State, I did this thing where I said, if this gets so-and-so retweets, I'm going to jump in Duck Pond, which is their tradition.
Yeah.
We win, we swim. And so I kind of do that. And
Yeah.
every week kind of, so I think there's legs there, and it's such a low budget thing that I feel like that's an opportunity. Otherwise, I mean, I do have some interviews this week for something that I was waiting on doing before I did this. So there's other things that are bubbling up right now. Kind of it's crazy 2 months later, but so like that's my vision. And if it works out, cool. If not, I had a great run, and I'm confident though that I've got AD's numbers on my phones now. I've had the head coach of Marshall DM me on Twitter. Like there's something here, and there's a story to be told. And it's not like a lot of people go, you should just go to the frat houses and like go crazy and like get a bunch of viral content. Like I was like, that's too easy for me. And there's too many people doing that. There's Red Cup, there's Barstool, there's yada yada yada. Like I think there's a better story there, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
It kind of sounds two things. It kind of sounds like you want to do your own little iteration of College Game Day, but you put a really unique spin on it that isn't so much about the games. It's more just about like being in that town for a weekend. But it's funny you mentioned Marshall's head coach. That's Charles Huff. He was a former Penn State assistant. So that's a funny tie-in.
Yeah. He so I do like use that like Barstool. I'll tag Barstool of each, like I tagged Barstool PSU. Honestly, wasn't very engaging for me because they didn't care. But like Barstool Marshall quote tweeted my thing and was like, if this guy can drive 1,900 miles to the Huntington, like you should be able to get out of your dorm. And within 30 minutes, the head Coach Huff like followed me and messaged me, get to H-Town and we'll take care of you. So that was like really cool. And that's the first coach to like ever acknowledge me, which like I don't expect them to, but so it's just, and every week it gets crazier. So
yeah,
I mean, your vision to me kind of sounds like Anthony Bourdain, parts unknown, but for sports. I mean, you go somewhere like Marshall, people don't know a whole lot about. I didn't know about that tradition where you jump in the lake, stuff like that. But you learn about it, through the people that you meet. I think that's something that people aren't doing. People know about Penn State. Like you can go to a fraternity there, and people are going to act, crazy or whatever. But people already know that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I was like, the vision will be maybe like, the season's 13 weeks or 14 weeks with week 0. You do two Pac-12, 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten, HBCU, Ivy League, and like a D2, like, and then and then like every year you do Army Navy or whatever, because that's like its own week. But I think so like season 1, I would go to schools that I already have connections with, and then from there, like I feel like I don't know, there's so many stories to tell, and we're in the golden age of content where everyone has an opportunity. So this is me I call this semester is my last semester of college debt, because I am putting this on credit cards, but it's like me in public, like saying this, I'm going for it. And I've had people message me like, hey Ben, you're my Forrest Gump, man. Like you're pushing me to do what I love, and that's part of it too.
That's awesome. All right, well, let's start to wrap this up, but just a couple of things. First, what do you feel like you've learned doing all this? And then secondly, drop your Twitter and your Venmo here. The self plug. I mean, you gotta, right?
Yeah, no, that's I'm grateful for that. Yeah, I mean, I've learned that, and it's very cliche, but like tell people where you want to go, and they're gonna like grab you and pull you there. Like, I said, I'm doing this, and I said it earlier. Like now, it's like, no, we are doing this. I have multiple people that message me and say, hey, do you need a logo? I'm going to make you a logo. Do you need a website? I'm going to make you a free website. Like, hey, like I got your next oil change, man. I posted pictures in Boone of cookies, and someone Venmo me, hey, I'm going to buy your cookies for you. And like, they see me chasing what I love, and my last name is Chase. So like, I lean into that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, this is crazy. You're an idiot for driving from, Orlando to San Jose. But, and that's the other thing. My body there's times where I'm like, for example, week 1, after Clemson, Georgia Tech, I stayed at my friend's house in Atlanta, and I said, I gotta do this outline of games. Like I gotta tie it up. It's loose. So I need to tighten it up. And I stayed up until like 12:30 trying to finish it. And I fell asleep at the laptop. I was like, all right, I'll just finish in the morning. I went to bed. I woke up. My body made me wake up at 4 a.m. and said, no, you got to, like, I couldn't go back to sleep. I finished it and I fell asleep again at my outline after it was done. So it's one of those things that's like, tell people what you're going to do and go for it. And then when you're doing what you love, it doesn't matter. Like sleep doesn't matter to me at all. Like people are like, how do you get from Orlando to San Jose in 42 hours and 40 minutes? I don't know, but I'm so dialed in because I'm doing what I love, even though I'm spending a bunch of money. Like I don't give a shit. So like I would say those are the two things I've learned. And then was the second part of the question. Oh, yeah, my handles are all the same at Benji Chase on Twitter, Instagram, and my Venmo handles at Benji Chase. I try to keep everything. Even my email is benjichase@gmail. So like, feel free. I mean, I never ask for money. I would love if you and Penn State, the fans, if they want to be a part of the family of this craziness that I'm going on, I would love that. I'm sorry that I witnessed your first loss, but I was rooting for you guys. And that's, you never know. I mean, your destiny for the season is in front of you. So,
Ben, you're gonna finish with the national championship, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now that on my outline, that's game 71.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, Ben, really appreciate your time. Good luck the rest of the way. You're about halfway there. So this is a really cool thing. I'm glad we were able to ask you about it. But really appreciate your time.
No, I'm grateful for you guys reaching out. And sorry it took a little bit to get it all tied in.
No worries at all. Everybody, thanks for watching. We are the 1-0 podcast. We'll be back later this week to talk about the upcoming Ohio State game. Keep following along with our content online at collegian.psu.edu and on our Twitters at PSU Footblog and 1-0 podcast. Peace out.